Hello friends and family, this is Molly coming to you from Planet Atlanta on April 15th, 2017. Our show today features 3 Johns in Atlanta. We'll start out with Jon Ossoff as a candidate for the 6th Congressional District. You can see there's record fundraising in the 6th District. He's the leading Democrat for the race that's coming up this Tuesday. And it will be decided this Tuesday for Georgia's 6th Congressional District, vacated by Tom Price. And we are featuring him speaking to a group in a backyard up in a neighborhood in Sandy Springs. Just a backyard campaign get-together with people asking questions and him answering them. And then we go to John Lewis in the English Avenue, Vine City area on April the 4th. The 49th anniversary of Martin Luther King's Jr.'s assassination. John H. Lewis, a longtime resident of Vine City and who has fought to preserve the history and the civil rights legacy of that area, led a candlelight vigil in front of the family home of Martin Luther King. Oh, a lot of planes going over today. And we just recorded some of the comments that were shared and songs that were shared at that evening of the candlelight vigil, led by Jon H. Lewis in front of the family home of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. On Sunset Avenue in the Vine City area of Atlanta. That was on April the 4th. And then on, we talked to one more John in Atlanta, influential John Martin, the chairman and CEO of Turner Broadcasting here in Atlanta, spoke to the Atlanta Press Club April the 13th at the Commerce Club, and we are sharing a few of his comments to questions that were asked by members of the Press Club and other attendees at the Commerce Club when John Martin, the chairman and CEO of Turner Broadcasting, spoke to us. So these are 3 very influential men in their communities, working in different capacities to make Atlanta a better place, to make the world a better place. Jon Ossoff, candidate for the 6th Congressional District. John H. Lewis, a historian and advocate for civil rights in the Vine City, English Avenue area of Atlanta. And John Martin, the chairman and CEO of Turner. And we hope you enjoy their comments. We hope it's enlightening and shows you different views of different folks doing different things in this city here in Atlanta. Thanks for joining us. It's Molly Reed Wu coming to you from Planet Atlanta on April the 15th, 2017.
There are 3 principles that I've proposed we apply to healthcare policy. One is no American should suffer or die from treatable or preventable illness. The second is no one should go broke because they get sick. And the third is no business should have to downsize or lay off employees because they can't keep up with premiums. And there's plenty we can do to push things in the right direction to get more folks covered at better prices with more choices and higher quality care. It just requires us to break out of now 7 years of partisan gridlock since the passage of the Affordable Care Act and do the nuts and bolts legislating to make that happen. If it means more competition across state lines in the insurance market, or repealing the medical device tax, or providing tax credits to small businesses who are struggling with the price of insurance premiums. Those are all things I'm open to, and I'll work with anyone to try to move things in the right direction. The bill that just was moving through Congress, I think, moved things in the wrong direction because it would have thrown 24 million people off of insurance back into the emergency room when their illness is already acute and it's a taxpayer expense. It would have pushed prices up, especially for folks 50 to 64, while weakening Medicare. And it would have gutted the CDC. And our critical pandemic prevention and health security infrastructure, which is a national security issue. So I hope that there will be opportunities to work across the aisle to get things done, to provide more choices at better prices.
Would you urge us to try to expand Medicaid in the state?
I think Georgia should accept the expansion that's been offered. And I think, to reject it as a matter of politics, these are real people. to children. I mean, that is a matter for the state government, but my opinion is that it's shameful.
Very much.
Yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about your views on trade policy? I guess the Trans-Pacific Partnership, NAFTA, and I'd especially like to hear what you think about the proposed border adjustment tax.
Sure. I think that what we learned from the TPP and the fate of the TPP is that as we seek to expand international trade, if folks domestically don't have a seat at the table, it'll be impossible to generate the domestic political support necessary to move a treaty like that through Congress. 25% of jobs in Georgia rely on international trade. As I mentioned, between Hartsfield and the Port of Savannah, we're a key hub in the global economy. And I think it would be very dangerous for this administration to start going down the path of tit-for-tat, retaliatory trade tactics. It's something that has been tried before at times of economic uncertainty, and it doesn't usually end well. So I think we need to work to expand our access to export markets, to grow Georgia as a hub for international commerce and logistics, while making sure that the negotiating process is transparent enough and that enough folks have access to it to make their concerns heard, whether they're labor or environmental concerns, so that these trade agreements can pass Congress once they're negotiated at the international level. The one case I do think that there might be room for us to use some of the tools in the toolbox is to impose some countervailing duties where foreign nations may manipulate their currencies to reduce the value of goods on international markets. But generally speaking, I think we need to be pretty cautious about it. Yes, sir.
What's your opinion of the defunding of the National Endowment for the Arts, public television? What do you think is the role economically of the arts in this district?
Well, I think you say a lot about your values by how you seek to balance the books. And as we work to achieve fiscal responsibility, and there is plenty of room for belt-tightening in Washington, to do so on the backs of folks who are defenseless, or at the cost of our own enlightenment, I think is a reflection of the wrong values, the wrong priorities. Yes, sir.
On my way over here, I was watching an ad, probably one of the vilest things I've ever seen on you. And I mean, if I think this is the Congressional Committee running it, and basically, I'm sure we're going to see more and more and more since you're the target. What do you plan on doing over the next 2.5 weeks to combat that?
Continuing to run a positive, substantive campaign that shows partisan garbage for what it is. That wasn't directed at you. Yes, ma'am.
Washington is very polarizing right now, and the Democrats being in the minority, how do you plan to get things done? I mean, things are not getting done in Washington, and you are joining a minority party. What do you plan to do? How do you plan to work with the White House?
Well, if I'm elected, I will just be one member of the House. So we should not overstate my capacity to transform the culture of the institution or the city. It's tough. At the same time, you got to do it one district at a time. And I learned when I was working as a congressional aide that you can get a lot done in the minority, and that there are actually still glimmers of bipartisanship. For example, every year, the Armed Services Committee passes a Defense Authorization Act, and I would work closely with Republican staffs and offices and members to try to improve the bill and get things done. And I think the infrastructure package that may be moving through Congress is a great example. The only test I will apply to legislation is, does it serve families in the 6th District? And if it does, then I'll support it. And if it doesn't quite, but it might, then I'll work to amend it so it does. And if it doesn't, I won't support it. And hopefully by getting some fresh leadership in there, we can slowly start to change the culture of the place so that it's not marked by such pettiness and division, but instead a focus on trying to get things done. Oh, hold on, Lonnie.
I feel good that you talk about bipartisan working in the Congress. I think we need to work with other people to make things work for us. But Trump in office 3 months now that he signed all this executive order. So a lot of the, like you mentioned, CDC budget is down. Right? It's going to be cut. EPA budget is cut 30%. I mean, all this regulation that keep deregulated again, and it's going to be a lot of damage for us. And how the Congress can do anything about it?
Well,
I mean, in point of view.
put it like this. I will work with anyone to accomplish things that are in the interests of the 6th District. And I'll stand up to anyone to oppose what isn't. I went down to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport the night that the executive order came down from the White House on immigration with Congressman Lewis and Congressman Johnson over the objections of some of my political consultants, because it was the right thing to do. And because this is the wrong moment in history to shy away from taking a stand out of political fear. So if it violates our principles, or if it's not in our interest, I'll be outspoken in my opposition. Where there's room to get things done that'll help the community, I'll do my best to get things done.
When the Herndons built the mansion up on the hill, that was the benchmark for our people. And everybody who built over here built as close to that as they could get. And Martin built this house. Next door to him was Fred Toomer. We remember Martin, Mr. and Mrs. Martin. And also Mrs. Martin's brother was a man by the name of Walter White, who was the president of the NAACP. In this house, the Toomers lived. He was the financial officer for Atlanta Life Insurance Company. Next door, before Dr. and Mrs. King moved in that house was owned by Professor Charles Gideon. Professor Gideon was the principal of Howard High School, the day principal at Howard High School, and what a bad brother he was. He was the principal of Howard High in the daytime and was the nighttime principal at Booker T. Washington High School. We remember a man, the first principal of Booker T. Washington High School, who was named Professor C.L. Harper. Well, my daddy was a contractor and worked on Mr. Harper's house. And every morning when Mr. Harper would call my daddy about a project that he had and wanted him to see about, he took time to talk to a 2 or 3 year old child and to plant seeds about education and about our people into my mind. Not only was he the principal of Washington High, he was the superintendent of the Sunday school, Sister Smith, at Big Bethel AME Church on Auburn Avenue. We pour libation. Certainly, we want to remember. We want to remember. We want to go back to the Reverend Adam Daniel Williams. Somebody say, who was Reverend A.D. Williams? Reverend A.D. Williams was the maternal grandfather of Dr. Martin Luther King. He was the father of Dr. King's mother, who was named Alberta Christine William King. That's where it started. It started with Reverend Williams. It was Reverend Williams, you all, who was an advocate for the schools, the first 7 public schools in Atlanta. You know how we got them in 1918, 1919? They were opened in 1921. Our ancestors said there was a bond referendum that was getting ready to be voted on in the city. And the ancestors, our African ancestors, said to them, y'all ain't gonna build Grady High unless you give us the money to build Washington High, Howard High, E.A. Wells, Young Street, E.R. Carter, and the other 2 names slipped my memory. But those were the first 7 schools, the public schools that we had. They were not the first schools that we had because we had schools, private schools that were on the campus at Morehouse, on the campus of Spelman, Morris Brown. The first school in Atlanta was in Big Bethel's basement, was called Gate City Elementary School. The plaque is on the building. Take time to go down there and read it sometime. It's right there on it. Reading is fundamental. Go down there sometime. What's on the building, and you will discover that there our ancestors. So we pour to them tonight. We want to remember tonight, most especially, our beloved Dr. Martin Luther King, whose name was, his birth name was not Martin Luther. That was a name that he chose. His birth name was Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis King is his birth name. So we pour to him tonight.
Coretta Scott King.
And to Mrs. Coretta Scott King, who was fearless.
What conversations do the leaders at CNN and Turner have about trust?
Well, at the risk of repeating myself, I think for CNN, the brand has to be synonymous with trust. And if we ever break that, we break that bond with our users, then the business is going to go sideways and to the wayside. I don't think we're going to do that. You read something in there, though, I think is really important, because this is something I said that we're trying to reinvent the company from the inside out. I strongly, strongly believe reach will always be important. And it's an easy way to monetize audiences. But more and more, we're turning Turner into a company that's trying to reach fans. And that's harder to do. But if we can actually invest in premium content, whether it's entertainment content, whether it's sports, whether it's kids, or whether it's news, where you can actually engage fans, people that will give you something that is maybe the most important thing that they have, which is their time. They will come back over and over and over again. It'll be easier to monetize them, and they will be willing to spend more and more money with you. And so it's a different mindset. It's away from sort of Nielsen daily overnight ratings, and it's more to how do you measure the brand perception? How do you measure fandom? You know, I saw a study that said that 90% of all adults in the United States claim that they're fans of at least one thing. And 85% of that 90% claim that they're fans of 5. That means people, I mean, it's a part of self-identity. It's a part of people, how they live their lives. And if you're a fan of something, that means you're going to over-index your time there, and you're going to come back over and over and over again repeatedly. and you're going to spend a lot of money. And one maybe silly anecdote, but I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and I said, we need Games of Thrones.
Games of Drones?
Games of Thrones.
Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Like HBO is Game of Thrones. I read a New York magazine article that listed the top 5 franchises ever in video. Number 2 was Harry Potter. Number 3 was Star Wars. Number 4 was Lord of the Rings. Number 1 was Game of Thrones. And somebody that I was talking to about this, they said, well, it's really interesting that you say that because I spent $150 to go to an arena and listen to basically a Game of Thrones soundtrack with one trailer at the end. And it was like, I went to one big Game of Thrones marketing promotion, but he's like, I would do it again tomorrow because we're so infatuated with Game of Thrones. If we can find people who just love the stuff that we do, we at Turner, we have to get better at figuring out how to monetize those brands and franchises in a 360-degree way, as opposed to traditionally just, you get advertising dollars based on reach, based on whatever Nielsen tells you it is. It's a fundamental change in the business, and I think more and more we're going to be moving towards fandom.
Well, the business model's changing, the way that you're going to be making money is changing. It sounds a lot more direct to consumer in the sense that this person, Mark Little, predicts a future where consumers pay directly for their content. There's no cable, there's no Comcast 800 number to call, nothing. So I think my question is back to CNN. When you look 50 years, not 5 years or 10 years, into the future, what conversations are you having about developing trust with your fans or with your consumers and changing the business model that you currently have?
I won't be having those discussions. Somebody will, because I fully expect that CNN is going to be vibrant and around in 50 years. And I think, look, it's funny, even as of 3 years ago when I used to talk to Jeff Zucker about the business, he used to say, well, there's CNN and then CNN Digital. And then we started to talk about the idea of there actually is no distinction between CNN and CNN Digital. It's all CNN.
You mean in the viewer's mind?
Yeah, it's CNN optimized in a different way, and consumers will be able to figure out however they want to interact with the brand. And I think, and I don't have a crystal ball 50 years from now, but I do think that CNN is a brand that can stand on its own, that if we offered it to consumers today, a la carte, and asked them to pay a subscription service for it, similar to the likes of an HBO, we would get a lot of subscribers.
Why haven't you done that yet? This is exactly what I'm asking about, the changing business model of journalism.
It's been talked about.
I mean, you make a lot of money from...
Look, CNN makes roughly $1 billion a year in profit. It's growing faster than it's grown in years. That's not to say that we can just rest on our laurels and be happy with how everything is going. And look, I think, to make a hard cut and say we're not going to be ad supported anymore, we're just going to offer it a la carte, could potentially be highly, provide a lot of dislocation in the near term. But I do think it's something that, we have discussed, the changing business models and the evolving business models. I think Turner Classic Movies is another service that I think people are fans.
Can you actually talk about recent innovations?
Well, we just launched a service recently called Filmstruck, which is a different, deep catalog library of movies aimed at movie fans. And it's too early to really report numbers. I mean, they're in the tens of thousands. It just launched a few weeks ago. But it's kind of interesting because of the early churn we've had on Filmstruck, more than half of the churn is because people are saying, well, you don't have the movies you have on TCM. We want the TCM movies. So now we're starting to talk about, well, what if we met with our colleagues at Warner Brothers, which has the biggest, deepest film catalog library in the world, and we said, what if we create a direct-to-consumer, deep movie catalog service? And we control the experience end-to-end. And that's something that, we're in discussions of. But all of this represents an evolution of thinking with respect to how do we deliver video content to consumers. And accept your premise, which says that more and more and more over time, it's going to be direct and not necessarily through intermediaries.
Which is an extraordinary responsibility on the part of consumers, right? I feel like we're more powerful than ever.
Oh, the consumers are in charge. I mean, if there's any question about that, there is no question about that. You know, the idea of years and years and years, media companies controlled all the windowing, they determined when content was available, they determined when content wasn't available. That those days are, those barriers are disappearing. And I don't know how many people, just by show of hands, I have at least 10 TV series that I know I want to binge watch, that I haven't had time to binge watch. Does anybody, am I the only one? I mean, how? So there's more fantastic content available than ever before. People just don't have time to watch it. But more and more, the way they're going to watch it is how they want to watch it. They're going to watch it either on their TV or on their laptop or on their mobile phone. I mean, I myself, and I'm not a person of the younger cohort, but I'm growing more and more comfortable watching video on this. And originally, if somebody would have said, oh, you're going to watch a full-length television show on your mobile phone, I would have said, forget it, I could barely see it. But now I'm doing it. And it's a great experience. If the experience is great, if it works, it's convenient, you don't get bounced out for your authentication every 30 days, thank you, Comcast. This is the golden age of video content, but the consumers are in charge. For sure.
Well, one thing that hasn't changed is the saying, content is king.
Yeah.
I am climbing Jacob's ladder. Oh, I am climbing Jacob's ladder. Higher and higher, oh, it's higher and higher, every round goes higher and higher. And he not told you. Yes, I think I make a good soldier. Yes, I think I make a good soldier.